Talk about it some today. How's everybody doing? We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, on YouTube. We're having some technical difficulties here, so I'm calling into the radio station through my phone. So today was day 2 of the trial. I watched a lot of it. We're going to talk about some of the highlights of what took place today. And then also, civil rights groups have filed a third lawsuit against Georgia, against the state of Georgia, regarding voting restrictions, regarding Senate Bill 202 that passed, that was signed into law last Thursday, March 25th. And then also, we see that the state of Florida, the GOP in Florida are considering a new election bill that would ban giving water to voters standing in line. So this is picking up on what Georgia has passed. And all of this is coming to a state near you, either your state or one next to you. This is coming to a state near you. We know that there are 43 bills that 43 states, Republicans in 43 states are pushing these new voter restriction bills. And it's in retaliation for the outcome of the 2020 election, that they lost the presidency, lost the Senate, and still lost the House of Representatives. So this, instead of them trying to come up with better policies, they're trying to limit who can vote. This is the game they're running. This is the game they're playing. Okay, so we'll talk about that on today's show. So on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. You've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. And when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. And we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right. Okay. You can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. I just finished teaching today's class shortly before coming on the air. So we had a great class today. You can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Information is right on the homepage. You can register there at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online course. We deal with thousands of years of history and deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right, and all the sessions are recorded. We do it live, but all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, so today, day 2 of the trial. And remember, George Floyd is not on trial. It's Derek Chauvin is on trial for killing George Floyd. Sometimes people call it the George Floyd trial. George Floyd is not on trial. George Floyd is dead. Derek Chauvin is on trial. So day 2 of the trial, the jury has now heard testimony from the teen who took the widely viewed video, now a former Minneapolis police officer, Derek Chauvin kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Darnella Frazier, who turned 18 last week, was not shown on the TV feed from the courtroom because she was 17 years old when she took the video on May 25th, 2020, Memorial Day 2020. So Darnella said that she was taking her cousin to Cup Foods when she saw a man terrified, scared, begging for his life. She said it wasn't right. He was suffering. He was in pain. She began to break down in tears when prosecutor Jerry Blackwell, and Blackwell did an excellent job on day one. Did a good job to day two, but he led with the opening arguments on day one. She broke down in tears when prosecutor Blackwell asked how witnessing what happened to George Floyd affected her personally. And she said, quote, when I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all black. She said, I look at that and I look at how that could have been one of them. I look at how that could have been one of them. Now, the court also heard some off-camera testimony from Darnella's 9-year-old cousin who was with her that day, and she described what it felt like seeing Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck. She said, I was sad and kind of mad. It felt like he was stopping his breathing, and it was kind of like hurting him. Then we also saw the excellent testimony from Donald Williams II, who's a mixed martial artist and has studied jujitsu. He testified on day one as well. He talked about shimmying and he talked about uh, uh, strangleholds and cutting off the flow of blood to the brain. And Donald Williams was among the onlookers shouting at Derek Chauvin to get off George Floyd. So he testified today as well. He told the jury on Monday that Derek Chauvin had George Floyd in a blood choke, using his knee on the side of George Floyd's neck to cut off the flow of blood to his head, to the brain. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation, the Future Radio, on Michael M. Hotel. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Are you looking for a great deal on advertising?
All right, stand by, everybody. Stand by. Stand by. Stand by. I need to call in on the computer. I was having technical difficulties tonight. Yeah, Shakita. Yeah, this is Michael calling back. I'm calling in on the Skype line. Okay. Okay, I'm going to send you these this other clip, okay? All right, thanks. Stand by, everybody. I have to get ready for this next segment. Stand by. We'll be back from break in 2 minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. And we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Very, very busy day today. Had to teach my class. And also, we're here for the show. Okay, so I want to go back to right before the break, we were talking about the day 2 of the trial today of Chauvin. All right, and I'm going to send you these other clips here, Shakita. We're going to go to that first clip from NBC Nightly News. It says day 2 of the trial. We're going to go to that. So cue that one up, please. All right. So right before the break, we were talking about some of the testimony that took place today, and also the calling numbers 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. It's the calling number if you have a quick question or comment. So we saw the young lady who filmed, who's the main one who filmed Derek Chauvin killing George Floyd, put his knee on his neck. Okay. With his knee on his neck, and George Floyd died. Let's put it like that, for legal reasons. So allegedly killing him. So Williams, now, and we also saw Donald Williams II, a mixed martial artist who was among the onlookers shouting at Derek Chauvin to get off George Floyd, resumed his testimony. Williams told the jury on Monday that Chauvin, on day 1 of the trial, he told the jury on Monday that George Floyd was in a blood choke. Derek Chauvin was using a blood choke on George Floyd, using his knee on the side of George Floyd's neck to cut off the flow of blood to his head. Today, in day 2, Donald Williams testified that he could see George Floyd was in tremendous pain in the final moments of his life. He said, "I believe I witnessed a murder," adding that he dialed 911 because I felt the need to call the police on the police. I felt the need to call the police on the police. Now, during a tense cross-examination, during defense attorney Eric Nelson sought to portray Donald Williams as becoming more and more angry at the scene. Basically, he wanted to portray him as the angry black man, but he was smarter than that. Donald Williams was smarter than that. Williams rejected the characterization, saying he was becoming increasingly scared for George Floyd's life. He said, I grew professional and professional. I stayed in my body. You can't pin me out to be angry, he said. Now, defense attorney Eric Nelson pointed out that Donald Williams called Derek Chauvin a bum at least 13 times in the video of the altercation. Donald Williams said, that's what you count in the video. That's what you got, 13. But he didn't try to attack Derek Chauvin. He didn't try to attack any of the police officers, anything like that. It was a tense situation and people were concerned for George Floyd. They were more concerned for George Floyd than the police were, basically. Definitely more concerned than Derek Chauvin was. We're going to go to this clip 1. This is a summary of day 2. Let's go to this. Let's go to this clip here. Day 2 trial. Shakita, summary. Take it off mute. Day 2 trial. From NBC Nightly News. Take it off mute. Okay, we'll get that. We'll get that.
Resisting
Okay.
arrest Yeah, me and the dude next the whole time.
Williams, a bystander at the scene last stand today, Donald Williams fought back tears as he heard the 911 call he placed while George Floyd was dying.
He just pretty much killed this guy that wasn't resisting arrest. Yeah, me and the dude next the whole time.
Williams, a bystander at the scene last May, said he studied mixed martial arts and told Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer, was placing Floyd in a kill or blood choke.
They called the police on the police.
Right. And why did you do that?
Because I believe I witnessed a murder.
During cross-examination today, a tense exchange with Chauvin's attorney.
When you do a blood choke, what you're trained on generally is to limit the blood supply to both sides of the neck.
No, the blood choke is to protect one side of the neck.
Chauvin's defense team is arguing Floyd died from underlying health conditions and drugs in his system. The next several witnesses testified off camera since they were minors at the time.
I heard George Floyd saying, "I can't breathe, please get off of me."
Darnella Frazier, now 18, shot the cell phone video that ricocheted across the world because she said what was happening to Floyd wasn't right.
Like he knew it was over for him.
If not for that video, George Floyd likely wouldn't be a household name.
When I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all Black. I look at how that could have been one of them. It's been nights. I stayed up apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more.
Late today, a Minneapolis firefighter testified she was stopped from giving medical assistance to Floyd when she first arrived at the scene.
When you couldn't do that, how did that make you feel?
Totally distressed.
Were you frustrated?
Yes.
The defense has suggested that this was a heavy crowd of bystanders, but the prosecution argues it was a small group of people going about their daily lives, thrust into a traumatic situation.
Okay, so that's from NBC Nightly News at NBC.com. Day 2 of the trial. I want to go to, let's see here. I want to go to, we're going to go to clip 1, Shakita. Witness says police never tried to provide medical aid to George Floyd. So the jury in the Derek Chauvin trial listened to hours of testimony from witnesses on the testimony. Okay. Let's go to clip 1, then we'll discuss it after the clip.
Testimony was some of the most moving testimony. The kids, the underage people who testified were really moving. Here's Darnell Frazier, who actually shot that now infamous video, the 8-minute and 46-second video, which you now know was like 9 minutes and 20 seconds. Here she is taking questioning about whether or not whether or not George Floyd was offered care.
So if you were observing Mr. Floyd under the knee of Mr. Chauvin, did you ever see Mr. Chauvin do anything to offer care to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did he ever either let up or get up so that he could breathe?
No.
Did you ever see him try to administer CPR?
No.
Did you see him call anyone else to administer aid to Mr. Floyd?
No.
Katie, we talked yesterday about the sort of most dangerous thing for the defense here is that after there was no pulse, and after Chauvin was told there was no pulse, he still stayed on top of George Floyd and continued to constrict his breathing. That testimony, what do you make of what you heard today?
Well, it ties in to what we heard in the opening statement from the prosecution, the idea that a police officer has a duty to protect, but also to show compassion. As you'll recall during the opening statement, by the prosecution, we heard the mission statement of the Minnesota Police Department that includes the idea of having this duty to care for the citizens. But you know what's important from a legal perspective, Joy, is that there's a third-degree murder charge that got reinstated. And that has a lower standard of proof than the second-degree unintentional murder and the second-degree manslaughter charges that Derek Chauvin is facing. To prove the third-degree murder, all the state has to prove is that Derek Chauvin caused the death of George Floyd through an act that is imminently dangerous to others. So what did we hear today? We heard lay people, eyewitnesses saying it was dangerous. He couldn't breathe. He didn't get off of him. He didn't give him help. And then we had firefighter EMT Genevieve Hansen saying, in her professional opinion, it was dangerous. He didn't get off of him. We heard two different people today say that they called the cops on the cops. And George Floyd may not have been able to testify on his behalf because he is gone. But we heard his voice today through the videos, which was eminently powerful. And we also heard it through the voices of those kids that testified, and it was so compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's play Genevieve Hansen, because I thought her testimony was really good, too. She got into a little mix-up with the judge at the end, but she was quite good. And this is Genevieve Hansen testifying today.
Do you think it would make your job fighting the fire harder if someone started yelling at you and telling you that you were doing it wrong?
I'm very confident in the training that I've been given, so I would not be concerned about somebody that was not trained to the extent I have been.
What if they started calling you names?
Like I said, I know my job, and I would be confident in doing my job, and there's nothing anybody could say that would distract me.
Mark, this struck me as one of the weirdest offenses here, that the people standing there were distracting the officers from providing care to Mr. Floyd. They didn't show any. There were 3 officers holding down George Floyd. There was only 1 officer trying to control the scene, Officer Tao. So if they were so concerned about the crowd, why was it 3-1 on Mr. Floyd and not 3-1 on the crowd? Now, that to me didn't make sense. Did it make sense to you?
Didn't make sense to me at all. But it's a defense, just throwing everything up against the wall, seeing what sticks. What it did display was that not only didn't the police officers live up to their duty to care for Mr. Floyd, they rejected the offer of assistance by a person who claims to be a professional healthcare person. So they are just tripling down on their negligence in this particular case, and it will really come out later on about their liability in regards to the death of Mr. Floyd. It's clear, as both sides have said, primarily the prosecutors have said, the video speaks for itself.
And Katie, it is very difficult I will say again, it is really hard to convict police officers, even when it seems like obvious that what they've done is wrong. We just had a case just this week where officers were acquitted for beating up another officer who was undercover. He was covering and videotaping at a protest, at a Black Lives Matter protest. The other officers beat him to the point where he needed surgery, and they still didn't get convicted. So it's very hard. But from what you saw today, I've never seen a case like this with this much compelling evidence from young people, from a firefighter, a professional, that was so damning. I've never seen anything like it. To you, does this seem like a sort of separate sui generis case against Mr. Chauvin?
Well, listen, we have to strap in for a long ride. This is just day 2. There's going to be a lot more witnesses. And the reason why we heard the defense focus on the crowd collectively is because they could not go after the individual witnesses today. They were minors. They were women. They were breaking down. I mean, you couldn't do that. So what you do is you go after the collective crowd. But remember, in the opening statements for Chauvin's defense, they said, let's not make an emotional decision, right? Let's not make it an emotional decision. Let's listen to the actual evidence. And what they're going to say is they're going to wait for their day in the sun, which is going to be the medical testimony, the expert testimony from that, and the no excessive use of force. They're going to try to tell the jury, which they've already done, we need you to make a decision based on common sense, logic, and reason. That's the only thing they can do, because it is inescapable. The emotional component today was harsh. It was really hard. It was brutal to have to sit through and hear it and listen to it.
Okay, so that was from the readout, Joanne Reed, MSNBC. Excellent analysis. That's from attorney Katie Fang and Mark Claxton, former police officer and head of the Black Police Officers Union. I forgot the exact name of the Black Police Officers Union. Okay, so that took place today. Then let's see, there's one other clip I want to go to. So also, as we switch gears here and talk about Oh, let me show you this one last article. Then we'll talk about Georgia. So Chauvin's defense team tried to paint the crowd as an angry crowd that was distracting the police officers from their job. But it wasn't an angry crowd. It wasn't an angry mob. They were concerned for George Floyd. And that's what the testimony was today. If we look at this article here from NBC News, Chauvin's defense attempted to portray bystanders as angry mob that diverted officers' attention. Chauvin's defense attempted to portray bystanders as angry mob that diverted officers' attention. And Donald Williams told Eric Nelson, defense attorney Eric Nelson, "You can't paint me out to be angry." Okay, so check out this article here and with more details. All right, I want to switch gears and talk about Georgia. So we've been covering the lawsuits, talking about the lawsuits that have been filed. There was one filed immediately after the bill was signed into law on March 25th. We have now 3 lawsuits filed against the state of Georgia. There's a good article from blackenterprise.com that talks about this. We're going to pull this up here in just a second. There's a good article from Black Enterprise that deals with this 3rd lawsuit. And this is behind SB 202, Senate Bill 202. Okay. And these draconian Jim Crow era laws that Georgia has passed. So if we look at this and its growing calls for economic boycotts, we're going to go to clip 2 in just a second here, Shakita. So let's look at, let me flip over to the one from, I'm going to flip over to the article from Black Enterprise. Just a second here. Got a bunch of tabs open. All right. So Georgia sued for 3rd time over voting restrictions bill. Delta, Coca-Cola face boycott over support. So there's more pressure being put on these corporations to come out and forcefully denounce these voter restriction bills and come out in support of African Americans, because as the article from the New York Times that we talked about yesterday, in 2020, when you were dealing with racial justice, a lot of these companies were falling over each other to make statements about racial justice. But then when it comes to voting rights, now they have laryngitis. Now they're quiet. So this is an article from Black Enterprise. Let me change the heading here. This is an article from Black Enterprise. Georgia sued for 3rd time over voting restrictions bill. Delta, Coke face boycott over support. This is from March 30th, 2021. So civil rights groups intensified their legal fight against Georgia's new voting restrictions with a 3rd federal lawsuit, while Atlanta-based corporations Delta Airlines, Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola continue to face boycott calls from activists who say they need to do more to oppose the law. They need to do more to oppose the law. They are correct. They are correct. Okay. And we talked about this yesterday with the article from the New York Times. And I'm going to show you that one in just a second, because this really shows a stark difference. And there's a stark difference between the approach that these corporations took when it came to the transgender bathroom bill. We have to keep going back to 2015 and 2016 with the transgender bathroom bill in Indiana, in the transgender bathroom bill in North Carolina, and how forceful and how bold these corporations were in their actions, threatening to cancel conferences in the state of Indiana, close down projects, all different types of things like this. But many of them are largely silent and have laryngitis now when it comes to SB 202 in the state of Georgia and voter restriction bills, especially targeting African Americans and Hispanics, but especially African Americans. This month is the 56th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, March 7th, 1965, and the 56th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery March. And Georgia is where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born. Okay? In 1929, Georgia, Atlanta. All right, so the Republican-backed law, which Governor Brian Kemp signed last week, strengthened identification requirements for absentee ballots, gave lawmakers the power to take over local elections. Okay, and this is one of the things you see a lot of people focusing on restrictions on giving people food and water in line. That's bad. This is even worse. This Senate Bill 202 gave lawmakers at the state level the power to take over local elections, to overturn local election results. Okay, at to take over county boards, county election boards. All right. Now, it also sharply limited the use of ballot drop boxes. It shortened early voting periods for runoffs and made it a misdemeanor for members of the public to offer food and water to voters waiting in line. Now, the lawsuit filed in U.S. District Court in Atlanta late on Monday called the law an attack on democracy itself, an attack on democracy itself. So it was filed in U.S. District Court in Atlanta on Monday, March 29th, 2021. And the lawsuit argued that the cumulative effect of many of the provisions would force more residents to vote in person on election day. Now, for some Georgians, this inconvenience may be manageable, the lawsuit reads, but for voters of color and other historically disenfranchised communities, and we talk about voters of color, we are especially talking about African Americans, but for voters of color and other historically disenfranchised communities who already suffer through disproportionately longer lines than white voters, it could be dramatic. Now, when I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on last Friday, March 26th, one of the things I talked about was Shelby County versus Holder, U.S. Supreme Court case, which gutted the Voting Rights Act, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, which dealt with the pre-clearance, and that allowed Senate Bill 202 to pass the Georgia State Legislature and be signed into law, because otherwise, if the Voting Rights Act had not been weakened by that U.S. Supreme Court case at Shelby County versus Holder, and Shelby County versus Holder was Republican backlash for President Barack Obama winning the second term, African Americans coming out despite the voter suppression that was taking place, and electing him to a second term. When you go research Shelby County versus Holder, within 24 hours of that U.S. Supreme Court case, states started passing voter suppression laws and voter ID laws. So when the 2016 2016 presidential election took place. Because see, one of the things that we miss is we don't make the connection from election to election and understand these U.S. Supreme Court rulings and understand these laws put into place and see how they impact elections. Okay, so in the 2016 presidential election, there were 868 fewer polling places nationwide to vote at. There were 868 fewer polling places. I've talked about this numerous times before. I dealt with this back in 2016 when the election was taking place. I do a lecture called African-American Resistance in the Era of Donald Trump, Voter Suppression, Reparations, and How Elections Had Consequences. Ari Berman, who used to write for TheNation.com, wrote a series of articles dealing with the voter suppression that was taking place during the 2016 presidential election. And this is an article that Ari Berman wrote, Berman. This is an article that he wrote that I cite often back in November 4th, 2016. Now, this was the day after. This was a few days before the presidential election. There are 868 fewer places to vote in 2016 because the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. There are 868 fewer places to vote in 2016 because the U.S. Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act. You think the Supreme Court doesn't matter? That means you don't understand the U.S. Constitution if you think the Supreme Court doesn't matter. Nearly half of the counties that previously approved voting changes with the federal government have cut polling places this election. And then the majority of those polling places were cut in African-American, Hispanic communities. Okay? So the article here. Then in the 2020 presidential election, there were about 1,700 fewer polling places. See, all this is connected. Okay? In the 2020 presidential election, there are about 1,700 fewer polling places. All right, now, if we go back and look at the article from Black Enterprise for March 30th, 2021. Georgia sued. This is the third lawsuit, okay? And once again, name of this article, Georgia sued for third time over voting restrictions bill. Delta Coke face boycott over support. Okay, so the complaint was brought by the Southern Poverty Law Center, the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, and the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund on behalf of several grassroots groups, including the 6th District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Okay, that is Reginald. That's the Reverend, the Bishop, and you're about to hear him here in just a minute. Bishop Reginald Jackson. That's Bishop Reginald Jackson. 6th District of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which includes more than 500 churches in Georgia, and the historically Black sorority Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Okay, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Shout out to the Deltas. They are involved in this lawsuit. You gotta jump in this. So I'm looking for the Zetas. I'm looking for the AKAs, Sigma Gamma Rho, the Sigmas, the Qs, the Alphas, the Kappas. To get involved in this lawsuit as well. My fraternity, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, need to get involved in this lawsuit. The state already faces 2 other similar lawsuits brought by civil rights groups over the law. Republican lawmakers in several other political battlegrounds, including Florida and Arizona, are pursuing voting restrictions as well, which they say are aimed at curbing fraud, but there is no widespread voter fraud. They know this. They know there's no widespread voter fraud. Okay, and let's keep in mind during the 2020 presidential election, there was only one presidential candidate that told their voters to vote twice, and that was Donald Trump. During the 2020 presidential election, there was only one candidate that told their voters to vote twice, and that was Donald Trump. So I want to go to this clip here. We're going to go to clip 2, Shakita. This is from the Readout, Joanne Reed, MSNBC. She's speaking with Bishop Reginald Jackson. Voting rights groups call for economic boycotts of Georgia. Let's go to this clip.
What do you make of that as somebody who's in a leadership position in Georgia? Do you think that either the state or these companies should be boycotted?
Well, Joe, in fact, on Thursday at 12 o'clock in front of Coca-Cola.
Hey, Shakita, back it up a few seconds. It cut out. Back it up a few seconds and start up again. Okay, we're going to start this back up.
Leadership position in Georgia. Do you think that either the state or these companies should be boycotted?
Well, Joe, in fact, on Thursday at 12 o'clock in front of Coca-Cola, we're going to announce the beginning of a boycott on next Monday. Let me say I'm supportive of boycotting the corporations. I'm not advocating the movie theaters. I'm not advocating Major League Baseball. I think that will take care of itself. I think we need to concentrate on these corporations who blacks give their dollars to. And we give our dollars to them. We expect them to stand with us.
And Coca-Cola put out a statement on Monday saying we're disappointed with the outcome. They sort of tried to revise their previous statement. We don't see this as a final chapter. We'll also continue to press for improvements to Georgia's election laws in future sessions. I'm not sure what they think is going to happen. The 98-page bill. Delta, they stood by their statement in which they said the law was improved over time. When it comes to boycott, Andrew Young, the great Andrew Young, has made a point. We're saying that he pointed out that, you know, the economy in Georgia is larger than the economy in South Africa, which, of course, was subject to pretty significant boycotts. We're the 44th economy in the world. And he says, you can quote me, I don't know why anybody wants to F with that. He put it that way very colorfully. But what impact do you think a boycott of Coca-Cola, Delta, UPS, Aflac, et cetera, would have?
Well, let me say this first of all. Let's take Coca-Cola. In June of last year, James Quincy, the chairman, CEO of Coca-Cola, said our companies can do better. We must stand with Black Lives Matter movement as allies and support other social justice causes. Our companies can do better. Well, here's a chance for them to do better, and they flunked it. Let's take Delta Airlines. Delta Airlines sent out an in-house memo where they actually praised the passage of this bill. And these statements released today or yesterday, they only seek to give cover to the fact that they have failed the Black and brown community by supporting our quest not to have our votes suppressed. And I don't think we can let that go unchallenged. We cannot act as if that's okay, we'll do better next time.
And are they the only companies that are going to face this? Because as I mentioned, there are lots of companies. There's UPS, there's Aflac. Can we expect these boycott calls to grow beyond Delta and Coca-Cola?
Yes, I think that, in fact, we're trying to arrange a virtual meeting with corporate executives across the country, because this is not just a Georgia problem. Including Iowa and Georgia, there are 41 other states which have bills similar to these on the books. This is really a threat to our democracy, number one. And number two, we need to call it what it is. It's racist. If Republicans had won, these bills would not have been introduced. Mm-hmm. When these laws worked for them, which in fact they passed before, when they worked for them, they were fine. When they work for us, all of a sudden there's something wrong with them. And the most ludicrous thing is all this legislation is based on a lie told by the former liar-in-chief. And now all of a sudden we want to give credibility to a lie. I remind George, in 2018, the former Secretary of State, now the governor, he took 500,000 names off the voter rolls, many of them voters of color. There was no legislation. There was no concern about the outrage of blacks. Everything was fine. But now when they lose, all of a sudden there's no integrity and we have to do something about it. That is absolute foolishness.
All right. That is Bishop Reginald Jackson, okay, of the 6th Episcopal District of the AME Church. I don't know that much about him, but I like what I see so far. Okay. So that was from the readout, Joanne Reed. And calls, we talked about Delta Airlines yesterday and the statement from Delta. Delta seemed that the CEO of Delta, Ed Bastian, was praising the voter restriction bill. Delta Airlines praises Georgia's new and improved law suppressing voting rights. This is from news1.com, March 28th, 2021. Read this article. All right, hey, we're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're going to go for a few more minutes. Remember, right now, it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Democracy Now! We'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. All right. Stand by, everybody. Okay. Also, if you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. If you do it through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN Show, SHOW, and be sure to type it in. It'll say Michael, and it'll come up with my pictures there. Okay. Also, this helps us to keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting 6 nights a week, pay some of the bills, etc. Okay. So we definitely appreciate that. Also, all of my DVD lectures and digital downloads are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we're shipping a lot of orders out this week. Okay. So if we look at this, Delta Airlines praises Georgia's new and improved law suppressing voting rights. We talked about this yesterday, so read this article from news1.com. The aviation company seemed to be rewriting history as soon as it was made. Okay, so we'll post this link here. Then I want to go back to the one from Black Enterprise. We'll talk about this some more on tomorrow's show. We may talk about Representative Matt Gaetz and the problem he's having as well. The investigation from the Department of Justice into him allegedly transporting a 17-year-old across state lines for the purposes of sex. So we'll see how that turns out. That's a felony. He denies all charges. He denies the allegations. Okay, so Delta and Coca-Cola both headquartered in Atlanta. We're going back to the article from Black Enterprise. Delta and Coca-Cola, both headquartered in Atlanta, have faced boycott calls on social media from critics who say the companies have not taken a forceful enough stand against the restrictions. Coca-Cola, in a statement released on Monday, March 29th, said, while we are disappointed in the outcome, we don't see this as the final chapter. And that's what Joanne Reed was saying. The company said it will continue to press for improvements to Georgia's election laws in future sessions. You can push right now because you can push right now because Coca-Cola helped finance some of these Republicans in the Georgia State Legislature. You can push right now. Delta Chief Executive Ed Bastian said in a statement on Friday, March 26, he said, quote, engaged extensively with state elected officials in both parties to express our strong view that Georgia must have a fair and secure election process and that the legislation had, quote, improved considerably during legislation. Legislation is terrible. It was worse previously. The original proposal was worse. This is a little better, but it hasn't improved considerably. It's still terrible. Nonetheless, we understand concerns remain. I really don't think you are, because people are going to stop flying Delta Airlines. Now, in an open letter on Monday, Reverend Bernice King, the daughter of slain civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., criticized the Atlanta business community for its shocking silence especially after last year's civil unrest prompted a national reckoning on race. The letter was also signed by the sons of two other civil rights icons, John Miles Lewis, the son of the late Congressman John Lewis, and Al Vivian, the son of the late Reverend C.T. Vivian. So Democrats won Georgia in November's presidential election for the first time in decades, and then followed it up by sweeping two U.S. Senate races in January, Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, giving the Democrats a narrow control of Congress, okay, especially in the Senate. It's a 50-50 tie with Kamala Harris having the tiebreaker. Now, Donald Trump has falsely claimed that his loss to Joe Biden was due to massive voter fraud, including in Georgia. No, it wasn't. Your ass lost. Because African Americans organized, Hispanics organized, Stacey Abrams, Latasha Brown, Cliff Albright, New Georgia Project, NSA UFA, people organized and voted your ass out of office. That's what happened. Multiple state recounts found no significant irregularities. There were 3 recounts in Georgia. Okay. The votes were counted. Well, 2, I think it's 2 recounts. 3 counts in total. 2 recounts. You lost. That's what happened. You lost. So read this article here. Black Enterprise. Georgia sued for 3rd time over voting restrictions bill. Delta Coke faced boycott over support. Okay. Read the articles at blackenterprise.com. There's some good articles. Also yourblackworld.net as well. Okay. They have good articles also. Okay, you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We had a really, really good class today, right before we came on. As soon as you register, you can watch it. All the classes are, we do the classes live. They're all recorded. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online class that I teach, dealing with thousands of years of history and dealing with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. This class, we're going to do 9 sessions, okay, instead of 8. I may have to slide in the 10th one because we had 2 guest speakers. We had Dr. David M. Hotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And then also Sister Nubia Wardford, who's a cultural anthropologist, and she dealt with the origins of ancient Kush and the origins of ancient Kush, as well as the African queens of antiquity. Okay, so in today's class, we dealt with we dealt with Christopher Columbus and the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. We talked about the Middle Passage. We talked about the Knights Templar as well, who in the Knights Templar being rounded up in France in October 13th, 1307. And that was Friday the 13th. That's one of the reasons why Friday the 13th is said to have an unlucky number. But if you go to our website, so we just posted a link here to register for the online course. As soon as you register, you can start watching the content, start watching the classes. So we also dealt with the Amistad. I talked some about the Amistad slave ship in the U.S. Supreme Court case of the Amistad of 1841, and the fact that the international transatlantic slave trade was outlawed in the U.S. in 1808, which forms a legal foundation for reparations. And Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so when you go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you scroll down, you see information about the radio show Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Then click right here. You can listen to audio podcasts of our show. Here to read articles that I've written. Click here to read articles. This is a episode of my show when I dealt with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion performing WAP at the Grammys and how horrific that was. I go and break this down and do a negative corporate control hip hop. So here's information about the show, about the online course, and there's a flyer for it as well. So click right here, register here. Takes you to the next page. Click right here to enroll. Okay. It's regularly $130. It's on sale $80. You can watch from around the world. You can even watch after the class ends. You can watch the sessions over and over again. Okay, there's no limit on that. So as soon as you register, you can watch today's class. We dealt with a lot of information. So I do a PowerPoint presentation in the class. We have video clips, book references, articles, etc. So you learn a lot. All right, so this ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow night. Peace.